It's so good to see everyone. Pardon my voice. I've been doing a little bit of speaking. I was in Jacksonville, Florida on yesterday, speaking at San Jose school there, 6th through 12th grade, speaking to the administrators. And I do a podcast, and we recorded 2 episodes this morning. So my voice has not recovered. I wish I was tech savvy enough to put the Juneteenth banner in the back. I really love it. These people are doing an excellent job there in Broward County. When you talk about including everybody, you talk about equity, you talk about the importance of celebrating Black history year round, you cannot do a better job than what Broward County is doing. So thank you for allowing me to be a small part of what you're doing. What I'm going to focus on today, and I normally have a screen to share, but I decided not to do that today. What I'm going to focus on is the importance of creating a culture of Black history. Black History Month is great. Us celebrating Juneteenth is great. I live in Panama City, Florida, and we have great celebrations on tomorrow and today. I'm really excited about that. But I want us to get a few strategies on how to create a culture that cultivates learning for Black history, where Black history is not even considered something else. It's just a part of all of our history. I believe it was 1960 when the state of Texas made Juneteenth a actual holiday. And now it's going to be a holiday for everyone. It's going to be reserved. It's going to get the respect that it's needed. So I want to start off by telling you about my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather's name was Narcisco Massalina. He went by the name Hulk because his eyes were so good, he could see fish in the water, he could see animals in the wild, he could point to travelers and explorers so they can shoot the wild game and they can spear fish and get that fish. My great-grandfather was the first Black man to settle in Panama City, Florida. He went and got 30 families, him and his dad, 30 families from Georgia, and brought them to a place called Redfish Point. This was in the 1830s. In 1940, they were kicked off that land. The federal government came in and the federal government removed them from that land and built an army base there. And now it's an Air Force base called Tyndall Air Force Base. The reason I tell you this, because my great-grandfather celebrated what he called Emancipation Proclamation Day on May 20th, a month or so, almost a month before Juneteenth. This was a great celebration. It was an awesome time. My great-grandfather was a preacher, he was a hunter, he was a fisherman, and he threw the wildest parties on Saturday night. So this man would throw the wildest parties on Saturday night, and then on Sunday, he would have church service. My kind of guy. So what I love about the story of my great-grandfather is the history element. My great-grandfather was married. It's going to blow your mind. He was married to a lady by the name of Ha Bale. They were married for 50 years, and no children was born of this union. They were never slaves. His father's name was Jose Massalina. They came to Florida when Florida was owned by Spanish. It was a Spanish property. He was never a slave. He lived a free life. He actually lived in the 1800s and was not a slave and did everything in his power to help free the slaves. That's why he went to Georgia to get those 30 families to start their own community. They built churches, they built schools, they built houses, and they started to work. And they, of course, practiced the art of agriculture, if you will, to make sure. That's right. Somebody just asked the question, well, if you had no children, how was he your great-grandfather? I'm glad you're paying attention. Ha Bale and Hulk were married for 50 years. She passed away. When she passed away, he went to Campbellton, Florida, and he bought a slave girl, and he married her. Her name was Mary Bell Smith. He was in his 70s. She was in his 20s. You listen to me? He was in his 70s. She was in her 20s. That's right. It's my great-granddad. My great-granddad. As I tell the young people, you don't believe me, Google it, baby, Google it. Hulk Massalina, Masslina is the Anglo-Saxon way of spelling it, but it's originally spelled Lineo, Massalino. What ended up happening with this great man, he married this young girl. He was 72 years old when they started having children. They had 7 children, Uncle LJ, Uncle Frank, Uncle Limba, 7 children, 3 girls, 5 boys, yeah, 7 children. 4 boys, 3 girls. The 3 girls were my Aunt Mildred, my Aunt Mary Bell, and my grandmother, the last child, Helen Baker. She married Mr. Baker. Last name changed, of course. She died at 90 years old. We did not do a good job of recording our history. That's why I'm so passionate about this talk today. We have to record our history. We record everything else. We would put everything else on social media. We record things and put them up. We need to record our history. I taught for 20 years. So as an administrator, coach, teacher, been blessed to be teacher of the year a few times. One of my most disappointing moments, I had a 17-year-old student who was in some trouble. And I was trying to counsel him. And at the time, President Obama had just been elected, 2008. Man, I was excited. I was telling him that you can be an athlete and a scholar. I said, President Obama loved to play basketball. His brother-in-law is a head basketball coach. He loves sports, but he's also very smart. That can be you. I said, just like Dr. King, this 17-year-old African-American male said, who is Dr. King? His mother was in the meeting. She was embarrassed. She said, you know Dr. King. We used to live on MLK Drive. He said, I don't know Dr. King. Do we work at this school? Who is Dr. King? She said, stop playing, boy. She was embarrassed that her son was 17 years old. He's African-American. He's Black. He did not know who Dr. King was. I was embarrassed because I was his teacher and coach. Did I only teach him sports? Did I only teach him math? Did I only teach him reading? We need to learn our history. So I went home. At the time, my children was 3 and 4, 4 and 5 years old. And I asked my son, do you know who this is? Had a picture, a book with Dr. King on it. Do you know, my son said, 4 years old, he's some kind of king. I dropped the ball. That moment on, we started making our children do what we call history projects. Not Black history projects. For us, we just called it history projects. Know your history. So our children, every time we was out of school on MLK Day, they didn't get to play video games all day. They didn't get to go play basketball all day. They had to go in the living room, present to me and my wife with a trifold. They had to have 10 facts, 5 visual aids. And we made them use the 12 powerful words. Now, this is when they got a little bit older, about 6 and 7 years old. The words like infer, formulate, compare and contrast, evaluate, 12 powerful words in their presentation. They had to write a 1-page essay, and they had to present to us facts about Dr. King. After a few years, they said, Dad, we've already said everything about Dr. King. What else can we research? And that's where we got to Juneteenth. We learned so much. I was embarrassed. I didn't even know about Juneteenth. I knew about the date because I went to college in Oklahoma, and a lot of my teammates were from Texas, and they would always talk about the Juneteenth celebration at home in Texas. When I was from Florida, I had never heard of Juneteenth. My children educated me. It's important that we create a culture in our schools, in our churches, in our community, a culture for our history, because we need to know. I have a cousin who was incarcerated for many years. He said, if I knew the lineage I came from, I may have had a little more pride in myself. I may have thought of myself differently. He grew up in New York, and he said his Italian friends knew their history. His Jewish friends knew their history. But he said, all I knew was I was a little Black boy who lived in Newark, moved from New York to Newark, spent some time in Hillside. And so I want to encourage you to teach your biological children and the children that you're over in the school system about history. Back to Hawk. So Hawk has these children, and his other wife dies. His second wife dies, Mary Bell Smith. Her mother said, Hawk, why don't you let me raise the girls and you raise the boys? Hawk was in his 90s and said, no, I want to raise all my children myself. It's an amazing story. Hawk will let the boys do whatever they want to do. As long as they did their work, they were all boat builders and they were fishermen. They would take people on excursions. They would come down from the north. They would guide them around. They would spend time in boats. Back in the 1800s in Panama City, Florida, there weren't very many roads. There was a white man named George Mortimer West. George Mortimer West from Chicago. Him and Hawk became friends, and they did a lot in our community to stop racial injustice, and they did a lot to build things that we still have today. My great-grandfather built a church called New Judson Missionary Baptist Church. The church originally started on Redfish Point. The church is now in town, what they call in town back then. It's in Panama City, Florida. It's the oldest African-American church in the city. My father's a deacon there. Very proud of that history. An interesting fact about Hawk, Hawk fought in the Civil War for both sides. Hawk fought in the Civil War for both sides. For both sides. For the Confederate side and the Union side. So it meant something to him when the Emancipation Proclamation happened. You said, how did he fight on both sides? He had a skill set that both sides needed. Toward the end of the war, when it was obvious that the Union was going to be victorious, they end up letting him come onto their side to help them navigate through the South. This information is easy to find. Civil War documents are very well kept and very well organized. I was speaking once, I'm a motivational speaker, at a Black History program. When it was over, there was a line of people telling me how good of a job I did. I felt good about what I talked about. I was honored. A lot of older people came up. There was a guy named Ivy Birch. You can Google him as well. Ivy Birch. Right now, he's 93 years old. He's 93 years old right now. At the time, he was in his early 80s. He came up to me and shook my hand. He said, "Your great-grandfather will be proud." And I said, "Yes, sir. What's your name?" He said, I'm Ivy Birch. I said, "Mr. Birch, thank you for saying that. Did you read about my grandfather? Have you heard stories about my great-grandfather?" He said, "No, I knew your great-grandfather." Instantly, I was stunned. I had chills all over my body. I said, "What you mean you knew my great-grandfather?" He said, "I grew up on Redfish Point. I grew up with your grandmother and your aunts, uncles." He was the one who told me that the boys can do whatever they wanted to do. They can rough rounds, they could smoke, they could drink, they could hang out, they could party, but they had to do their work. The girls could not leave the house. Those three girls, Mildred, Maribel, and Helen, they could not leave the house. They had to stay on the porch. They would fold laundry and they would do laundry for the people in town, the white people. The brothers would take the laundry back and forth on boat. They were only people in this town in Redfish Point that had a one-day turnaround on laundry if it didn't rain. They would take your linen, sometimes even your curtains and even your clothing, and they would wash them early in the morning and they would have them dry by the end of the day and they would get them back to you. No one else on the part of the peninsula can offer that service. I want you to share with your students, your biological children, the importance of Juneteenth, that we have the opportunities we have right now because of those who came before us. 3 things I want to leave with you before I touch a little bit more on Hawk, because it's so interesting. Number 1, we all know this. We don't know our history. We're doomed to repeat it. Number 2, when young people know their history, it gives them a sense of pride in themselves. Then we get into self-esteem. We get into the importance of emotional health. We get into mental health awareness. If you realize you're a part of something special, if you realize you come from great stock, if you realize your ancestors were kings and queens, then you act differently, you talk differently, you carry yourself differently. And last but not least, number 3, I want to encourage you to document history. Now, I know these calls and these educational Zoom is not about selling products, so I'm not selling anything, but I do want to show you my book. I wrote a children's book about Hawk Masalini. The reason I wrote it is because one day I'm going to leave this earth. And when I leave this earth, this book will still be here. See, many of you have a book inside you right now. I'm talking about all the people on this call. You have a book. Portia has a book. Susan has a book. Sheldon has a book. Kristen has a book. Joanne has a book. Joanna has a book. Like, you have a book on the inside of you. Nadine has a book. Sydney has a book. Gina has a book. Miss Thomason has a book. Miss Mitchell has a book. Kim, you have a book. Like, you have a book on the inside of you. We need that book. I dropped the ball not recording my grandmother talk about her famous father. Many newspapers came to Panama City, Florida in the year 1940. They came in 1940 because Hawk turned 100 years old. You can Google this. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the Montgomery Advertiser, I think it was a South Carolina Chronicle at the time. Many newspapers came down because they wanted to meet this man that had a keen mind, was 100 years old. When Mr. Birch told me when he said, I met your grandfather, he said, you remind me of him. I started crying instantly. I said, what? He said, he was a good talker. He loved to tell stories. He could gain people's attention. He said he tried to be funny just like you were trying to be funny today. So I didn't know what Mr. Birch was saying. I was funny, I was trying to be funny. But my point is, me knowing that changed the way I saw myself. Me knowing that made me want to have more respect for myself, for my family. I want to encourage you to write a book. It's important. It's important. Every time you drive by a graveyard, you're driving by memories you'll never have. You're driving by stories that'll never be told. You're driving by strategies and principles that can help us. Don't leave the earth with all that information. Don't leave the earth with all that knowledge. You have so much to offer. We need your story. It's not hard to write a book. You can go to kdp.com, Kindle Direct Publishing, kdp.com. It's not hard at all. You're an educator. You've been writing your whole life. You know how many papers you had to write to get that bachelor's degree, to get that master's degree? I'm working on my doctorate right now. I'm writing paper after paper after paper after paper. My point is you're already writing. Put your story in a book so when your time on this earth is gone, we can have your story. We need, your children need your story. Your grandchildren need your story. My cousins in New York and New Jersey, they live up there, a lot of them. One of them told their son, he's 6 or 7 years old. He said, your cousin, Willie Spears, wrote a book about our great-grandfather, your great-great-grandfather. His son said, oh, I know, we got that book in my class. He said, well, y'all don't have this book. Your cousin wrote it. He said, yes, we do, Dad. He said, no, you don't, son. I'm trying to tell you, listen to me now. You think you know everything. Listen to me. You do not have this book, but I'm going to get a copy for you. That little boy had his teacher take a picture of the book, call his daddy, and say, yes, we do have this book. My cousin Dwayne had to apologize to his son. So, yes, I agree with that comment. Thank you so much, Ms. Thomason. This is my point. This is my point. I'm in Panama City, Florida. Somebody in New York has the book that I wrote. I never meet those people. I never be in that classroom with that first grade teacher. But she found it online and she shared it with her students for Black History Month. I want to encourage you to write down your story. Juneteenth, everyone needs to know about it. Just like we know Christopher Columbus, just like we know the emancipation, all the history, Civil War, civil rights, all of it, we need to know it all. And now we'll learn the truth about Columbus. See, now we have more opportunities to put our story out there. We control the narrative. You know how awesome it was for me to write this book? It's a children's book, short book, has a lot of facts in it. Children's book. The reason I'm telling you this is if I can do it, you can do it. Write a book, okay? I've written several books. This book is called Culture Creators, okay? In the book, I talk about the importance of creating a culture conducive to growth. Oranges don't grow in Michigan, and snowmen aren't built in Miami because those environments aren't conducive to growth. In your classroom, are you creating an environment conducive to growth when it comes to Black history? Are you weaving Black history through your curriculum, through your lesson plan, not just in February, but throughout the year? Who discovered the gas mask? Black man. Who invented the traffic lights? Black man. So I want to encourage you to learn your history. I'm gonna spend 3 more minutes talking about Hawk, then I answer any questions, okay? Hawk Massalina, 100 years old in 1940. He died at 107 years old in 1948. His birthday is in April. He died in February. He was almost 108 years old. His dad, Jose, Black folks called him Josie, J-O-S-E. His name was Jose. Jose died at 112 years old, 112. So I told my wife, I got longevity, baby. I'm gonna be around. Don't be looking. I'm gonna be around, sticking around. Hold on, you know, accident. I say that to say, I want each and every one of us to tell our story. Your story is different than my story. I can learn from your story. You can learn from my story. Hope died 802 East 8th Court. They just tore that house down about a month ago. Very sad sight. My Uncle Frank used to live in that house. And growing up, I didn't know that was the house that my great-grandfather passed away in. This man wore a lot of hats, just like teachers do today. You're a psychiatrist, psychologist, you're a school nurse, you're a mental health professional, you're a social worker. Oh, and by the way, we need you to teach these timetables as well. So I admire you. I look up to you, to parents, to teachers, to administrators. I believe teachers will impact more lives in 1 year than most people will in a lifetime. I really do. I believe teachers will impact more lives in 1 year than most people will their entire lifetime. It's an amazing profession. However, a lot of influence comes with that profession. Imagine the white kids in your class that don't know Black history. Imagine the Black kids, like my boy Theron, 17 years old, didn't even know who Dr. King was. Not just shame on him, not just shame on his mama, shame on me, because he was in my class and I had influence on him. What are you doing with your influence? Are you teaching people about Juneteenth? Do they only know Rosa Parks, Frederick Douglass, and Dr. King? Do they learn about Shadona True? Do they know who Shirley Chisholm is? Kamala Harris has helped us in so many ways. President Obama has helped us in so many ways. We have tremendous examples. We must do our part. Voting, that was part of it, but it doesn't stop. Black History Month doesn't stop in February. It's year round. So I want to commend you all for taking time out of your day to be on a Zoom call about education and about this great holiday that we get to celebrate. I'm very grateful that we don't live as slaves anymore. I'm very grateful that we have opportunities to make things better for all of us. I speak in prisons all the time. I'm usually in a prison almost every Saturday. And a lot of times, a lot of those inmates who are people just like you and me, they want to know history. They want to hear history. They're intrigued by local history. I want to encourage you to write it down, put it in a book, publish it. So when you're gone, we'll still have that story. Thank you all for your time. If there's any questions at all, I want to thank you, Ms. Green, for allowing me to be a part of this and being my tech person, if you will, during this call. If there's any questions at all, I don't mind answering any questions.
Mr. Spears, you have a question in the chat from Ms. Tomlinson. How do you extend the passion you have on your campuses to support our students and increase their self-love to positively impact their achievement levels?
Ms. Tomlinson, great question. The answer, it seems simple, but everyone has to be on the same page. So as an administrator, I remember saying, you know, we don't use cell phones in class. And then a young man say, well, Ms. Green said I can use in her class. We don't wear hats in the building, but Mr. Johnson don't mind if you wear them in his building. So when everyone's now on the same page, it's very difficult to have any type of growth. What I would say to that question is, meet the children where they are. They like TikTok, huh? Let's be honest. They like Snapchat. Yeah, let's get hip. Let's stop being so old. We're so old school. We see blue hair, we go crazy. We see rips in the jeans, we go crazy. They don't act like us. They don't talk like us. They don't listen to what we listen to. We, in order to get them where we want them to go, we have to meet them where they are. We need to meet them where they are. So this is what I used to do. I used to have book clubs on campus because our reading scores for African-American males were so low. It was embarrassing when I saw the numbers. And I told our principal, I said, listen, with all due respect, I want to take this on. We got it. So I made it exciting to read. We made little movie trailers with the kids to their iPhones. And they made the little movie trailers. We read a book. Y'all know Sharon Draper's book, Darkness Before Dawn and Forged by Fire. All those books. We did little movie scenes about those books. And 1 minute movie scenes. And then we had a book club. We made it cool to read. And then I would put posters up. I found a poster of who was that? Jay-Z. Jay-Z was reading a book. And I said, hey, y'all, we got a celebrity on campus reading a book today. We got a celebrity. You got to catch the celebrity. They're on campus reading a book. And I would put the poster in E Hall and put the poster in G Hall and in the library. And they would walk around and do a selfie with that poster. And they were like, Coach, you think you slick. You talking about Jay-Z on campus. So I eventually told them who it was. And it just was a picture of him. We made it cool to read. We would have a book club meeting once a week. And then what we would do is talk about, we read chapter 3 and 4. Tell me about it. What did you think about her? What did she look like to you? What was she wearing in that scene? And when we did that, we got them excited about reading. We didn't care what they read. We wanted them to read the book. We would talk about and read other materials. So that's one way we changed the narrative and made it cool to read. And then all the athletes who said, I'm going to the NBA. I'm going to the NFL. To all the entertainers, I'm going to be a rapper. I'm going to be a producer. I'm going to be a video game designer. I'm going to be all of those guys. We say, who's going to read your contract? Huh? You going to trust somebody you don't know to read your contract? Or are you going to fall in love with reading so no one cheats you? So we convinced them that smart people read. It wasn't an easy sale. That's why I said everyone has to be on the same page. And that what happened was that excited the campus, and we had a passion for reading. Thank you for your question, Ms. Thomas. That's right. Thank you. Any other questions? And thank the person for the passion. When I was in school, they said, you talk too much. You need to be quiet sometimes. You're too wild. You need to sit still. You got ADHD. What I had to learn was it's the time to be quiet. It's the time to talk. I've been on these Zoom calls all day. I was quiet because it wasn't my time to talk. So you have a student that's rambunctious and have a lot of energy. They may be the next Eric Thomas. They may be the next President Obama. They may be the next radio host. They may be the next Steve Harvey. Like, don't squish, don't scrunch, don't minimize your students' energy. Just teach them there's a time and place for that energy. There's a time to sit still and be quiet and listen. There's a time to do your work. There's a time to work in a group. And there's a time to be excited, baby. Y'all see I'm sweating in here. I think my wife turned the air off. I'm excited. I get excited when we're talking about us and improving us because it starts with us. It starts with us. Look in the mirror. That's the joker responsible for making sure our children learn. Any other questions? Ms. Green, let me know. I got about 5 more minutes.
Mr. Spears, can you put the name of your book in the chat again?
Yes,
there was a question about that.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. Well, I got 1 more minute, Ms. Green. So I'm going to do a shameless plug. So she gave me, let me put my stuff in the chat. It's not Willie Spears. I don't know why it does that. But my daughter, Ms. Green, my daughter wrote a book at age 15. 15 years old, she wrote a book. And let me tell you why she wrote a book. I told her she was smart. Her mama told her she was smart. Grandparents told her she was smart. She had a 6th grade teacher, told her she was smart. A 6th grade teacher told her she was a good reader. She believed the teacher. She didn't believe me now. I'm a daddy. She didn't believe me, but she believed the teacher. Some stranger, she believed a stranger. My daughter was in Beta Club, won a writing contest. Well, she got 3rd place. 1st place was the 8th grader. 2nd place was the 8th grader. 3rd place was my daughter. She was so excited. She's like, Dad, I'm just in the 6th grade. They 8th graders. She went out to Orlando, Florida, won that award. It changed the way she saw herself. I would tell her, Black girl magic. Black girls are beautiful. Black girls are smart. But a stranger told her she was smart. She believed a stranger. And my daughter said, Dad, I want to write a book. So my daughter's book on my website, williespears.com, it's called Spears Makes Her Point. She talks about living as a young Black girl in this society, living in where we live. It's more like Alabama than Florida. I live in North Florida. It's a little different in Broward County. And so not as diverse. She talks about what it's like living as a Black girl during the pandemic, during the social injustice, and as a teenager. And so I learned a lot about her that I didn't even know. And I don't agree with everything she wrote, but I'm not a 15-year-old girl. And so it was just great. But check that out. Again, Spears Makes Her Point. I just wanted to say that because the power of a teacher changes lives. I really believe that. You're right, Ms. Thomason. And the best thing, Miss Green, the best thing about my daughter writing a book is not, and I hate to even admit this, but it's not the pride of a father or her. The best thing about it is she don't make $1 million off of it. You know, the book's only $10. It costs like $5 to even get it in print form. But she could pay to get her own hair done, Miss Green. Yeah, I mean, I'm just being honest with you. Like them 4 hours of her sitting there getting her hair done, $75, $80. Now she can pay to get her own hair done. So that's a win for me. I appreciate it because gas is going up.
I may recommend that book to our Delta Academy girls. So.
Oh, wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Because she need a hair done soon. So that'd be a great recommendation. That'd be good for her. Because I ain't paying no more. I'm not paying for any more hairdos. She got a book. Push your book. Get your hair done. Thank you, baby. Thank you, Ms. Nicholson. I appreciate that. It's not any more questions, Ms. Green. I appreciate your time. I thank y'all for listening to me. It's truly an honor to be a part of this. I don't say that lightly. I've been listening all day, taking great notes. There's been some great breakout rooms. I think every district should do this. You know, the pandemic was horrible, but we gained so much from it. We learned so much, and we learned that Zoom is a viable way to learn, to grow, and to help sharpen one another. And so I've learned so much today. I hope I've inspired you all. Hope I've motivated you all. And I hope that someone on this call writes a book, because you got a book in you.